Snow had been falling for 3 days straight when the message came through. It arrived at 2:11 a.m., breaking through the silence with a voicemail notification that shouldn't have been possible. There was no signal in this part of the state, not for miles, and the old phone had been dead for weeks. Yet the screen glowed softly on the nightstand, vibrating just enough to wake me. I remember staring at it for a long time before touching it. The way you hesitate before opening a door you're not supposed to. The message was only 8 seconds long. The voicemail arrived in a way that felt wrong long before I understood why. My phone hadn't been connected to a network in days. Not since the storm swallowed the last cell tower on the ridge, and left the valley cut off from everything beyond it. I'd powered the device down to save what little battery remained, tucking it into a drawer, as though ignoring it could somehow quiet the unease that had been building since the snowfall began. So when the screen flickered to life in the middle of the night, casting a pale glow across the ceiling, my first thought wasn't surprise. It was dread. The vibration was soft, almost hesitant, like someone knocking once and waiting to see if they'd be heard. I lay still, listening to the wind grind against the walls, waiting for the sound to stop. It didn't. The phone buzzed again, and this time the silence afterward felt heavier, as if something on the other end was listening for a response. I reached for it slowly, half expecting the screen to go dark the moment I touched it. Instead, a notification sat there, calm and impossible. One new voicemail. No number, no timestamp, just a pulsing icon, waiting. The air in the room felt colder as I pressed play. At first, there was only static, thin and uneven, like wind scraping across a microphone. Then came breathing, shallow, rushed. Close enough that I could hear the wet sound of it catching in someone's throat. The voice that followed didn't speak immediately. It hesitated, as if the person on the other end was trying to decide whether saying the words out loud would make them real. "If you can hear this." The sentence trailed off, swallowed by another gust of noise. When the voice returned, it was quieter, strained in a way that made my stomach tighten. "Don't follow the tracks, it isn't empty. It's waiting." There was a pause then, long enough for me to think the message had ended. I almost pulled the phone away when a final sound cut through. The unmistakable crunch of footsteps moving through snow, slow and deliberate, circling rather than approaching. The recording ended abruptly, like someone had dropped the device or been forced to stop. I replayed it 3 times, then a 4th, searching for some explanation I could live with. A prank, maybe. A delayed message from years ago. Anything that didn't involve what I already knew in my bones. The voice was recent, terrified, and real. What unsettled me most wasn't the warning itself, but the way it felt directed. Personal. As though whoever recorded it knew exactly who would hear it. When I checked the message details, my breath caught. The location tag was still attached, faint but readable. A town name I hadn't seen in years, one that had been crossed out on maps and quietly erased from travel guides after the fire. No residents, no power, no infrastructure left to send anything at all. Yet the timestamp said the message had been recorded less than an hour earlier. I sat there in the dark, phone clutched in my hand, listening to the wind outside rise and fall like something breathing just beyond the walls. The storm had thickened overnight, burying the world in white, and for the first time I noticed how complete the silence between gusts had become. Not peaceful. Expectant. That was when I realized the voicemail hadn't been a warning, it had been an invitation. The road appeared just after the tree line thinned, where the forest should have opened into a shallow ravine choked with snow. I'd driven this route before, years ago, back when the town still existed on paper, and I knew what should have been there. Rock, broken guardrails, a steep drop swallowed by ice. Instead, my headlights caught the edge of asphalt curling gently away from the main highway, smooth and dark, as if it had been laid down overnight. I slowed instinctively, heart beating louder than the engine. The road had no sign, no marker, no reflective paint. It simply was. A narrow stretch vanishing into the falling snow, untouched by plows, yet perfectly clear of drifts. The storm raged everywhere else, but here the snow seemed to hesitate, thinning into a mist before it reached the pavement. I told myself I was imagining it. Fatigue, nerves, the residue of a sleepless night. I drove past the turn once, then again, circling back under the pretense of checking my bearings. Each time, the road waited in the same place, unchanged, as if it had always been there and I was the one arriving late. When I finally turned onto it, the world behind me vanished almost instantly. The main road disappeared in the rearview mirror, swallowed by a curtain of white so thick it looked solid. The silence deepened, pressing against my ears until even the hum of the engine sounded muffled, distant. My headlights stretched forward but revealed very little. just a narrow tunnel of visibility and snow falling in slow, deliberate sheets. The longer I drove, the more wrong it felt. The road never curved sharply, never climbed or descended, yet my sense of direction dissolved. The trees lining either side grew denser, their branches bent under the weight of snow, forming a corridor that seemed to close in the farther I went. Every few minutes, I checked the odometer. It ticked forward normally, but the scenery never changed. After what should have been 10 minutes, I noted something else. The tire tracks behind me were gone. I slowed to a crawl, leaning forward to peer through the rear window. Nothing. Just smooth, untouched snow stretching back into darkness, as if I'd been the first thing to pass through since the storm began. A chill spread through me that had nothing to do with the cold. I told myself the wind must have covered them. That made sense, it had to. But when I stopped the car and stepped out, the air felt strangely still. No gusts, no drifting flakes. The snow beneath my boots was pristine, unbroken in every direction except for the faint impressions of my own footsteps leading away from the door. They pointed forward. I didn't remember making them. I got back in the car, hands shaking, and drove on. The road stretched endlessly, a looping ribbon that refused to lead anywhere familiar. The trees began to look wrong. Not dead, not alive, but frozen in the middle of motion, as if they'd been caught trying to move. Every so often, I thought I saw shapes between them, darker patches where the snowfall thinned, but when I focused, there was nothing. Then the radio crackled. I hadn't turned it on. At first, it was just static, low and uneven. Then a tone slipped through, wavering like a voice caught between frequencies. I reached to shut it off, but my hand froze when I heard words forming beneath the noise. "You're close." The signal cut out before I could react. The silence that followed felt heavier than the storm itself. I stared at the dashboard, breath fogging the glass, heart pounding as a single thought settled into place with terrifying clarity. This road wasn't taking me to the town. It was leading me back to something that already knew I was coming. The town emerged without warning, not with the gradual signs of civilization I expected, but all at once. Buildings materializing through the snowfall like shapes remembered from a half-forgotten dream. One moment the road was empty and narrow, hemmed in by trees. The next, it widened into a main street buried beneath a thin, undisturbed layer of snow, stretching forward between rows of darkened structures. I slowed to a stop, engine idling, afraid that if I turned it off the silence would become permanent. The town looked preserved rather than abandoned. Storefronts stood intact behind frost-coated glass. A gas station sat on the corner, its price board still lit, numbers glowing faintly despite the lack of power lines. Street lamps cast pale halos onto the ground, but the light didn't flicker or hum, it simply existed, steady and wrong. What unsettled me most was the warmth. I stepped out of the car expecting the bitter sting of winter, but the air was almost comfortable, like the edge of a heated room. Snow continued to fall, yet it never seemed to accumulate beyond a thin layer. My breath fogged, but slowly, as if the cold were hesitant to touch me. The street was quiet in a way that felt deliberate. No wind, no distant creaks of buildings settling. Even my footsteps sounded muted, swallowed by the snow before they could echo. I walked past a diner with its neon sign still glowing, the word "open" buzzing faintly above the door. Inside, tables were set, plates sat half cleared. A mug of coffee rested near the counter, a thin ring of dried foam clinging to the rim. It looked as if everyone had simply stood up and walked away. I moved deeper into town, my unease growing with each step. Curtains were drawn in some windows, open in others. In one house, I saw a television still playing. Just static, but bright enough to cast shifting shadows against the walls. In another, a child's coat hung on a hook by the door, dusted with snow that hadn't melted. Then I noticed the footprints. They crisscrossed the street in overlapping patterns, some sharp and fresh, others blurred as though they'd been walked over again and again. None of them led out of town. Every set curved back toward the center, converging like veins toward a heart I couldn't see. I followed one trail to the edge of the square, only to watch it vanish beneath untouched snow, as if erased the moment I looked too closely. A sound carried through the stillness, soft, rhythmic, footsteps. Not mine. I turned slowly, scanning the street, but saw nothing moving. The sound continued anyway, circling, sometimes close enough that I could swear it was just behind me. I spun again, pulse racing, but the town remained empty, its buildings staring back like blind eyes. That was when I realized something else was wrong. The doors were warm. I pressed my palm against the wood of the nearest house and felt heat beneath it, steady and unmistakable. Someone had been inside recently. Maybe they still were. A flicker of hope stirred in my chest before it curdled into dread. The voicemail echoed in my head. "It isn't empty." A faint sound drifted through the air then, almost lost beneath the silence. A murmur, not words exactly, but the cadence of voices speaking just out of reach. They seemed to come from everywhere at once, behind walls, beneath the snow, from the spaces between buildings. I took a step back, heart hammering, and that was when I saw the windows change. One by one, lights flicked on across the town. Not all at once, slowly, methodically, as if something had noticed me standing there and was waking the place up, room by room, preparing for my arrival. The voice came from somewhere behind the buildings at first, faint enough that I thought it might be the wind slipping through broken boards. I stood still, listening, every nerve stretched tight. The sound wavered, rose, and then shaped itself into something unmistakable. My name. It wasn't shouted. It wasn't whispered either. It was spoken the way someone would call to you from another room, certain you'd hear them eventually. Calm, familiar, patient. I turned slowly, my breath catching in my throat. The street remained empty, lights glowing in windows that hadn't been lit seconds earlier. The snow continued to fall in soft, deliberate flakes, yet the voice cut through it cleanly, echoing from somewhere deeper in the town. I told myself it couldn't be real. That my mind, already fraying from the storm and the isolation, was filling in gaps that didn't exist. But then it spoke again, closer this time, and used a word no one else should have known. A name I hadn't heard spoken aloud in years. My chest tightened. I took a step back, boots crunching loudly in the silence. The sound of my own movement seemed to disturb the air, as if I'd broken some unspoken rule. The voice paused, then shifted direction, now coming from my left, drifting between the buildings. Come here. Not a command. Not a plea. An invitation. I turned, heart pounding, trying to trace its source. The sound didn't echo the way it should have. It moved too smoothly, sliding through space without resistance. Every instinct screamed at me to run, to get back to the car, to leave this place behind while I still could. But my feet felt heavy, as if the snow beneath them had thickened into something almost solid. The voice spoke again, closer still, and this time it carried emotion, relief, recognition. You found us. A figure appeared at the end of the street, just beyond the reach of the nearest light. At first it was only a shape, tall, indistinct, its edges blurring with the falling snow. I squinted, heart racing, trying to make out details. The longer I looked, the more wrong it seemed. Its proportions shifted subtly, as though it were adjusting itself to my expectations. I took a step back. It took one forward. The sound of its movement wasn't footsteps. It was softer, like snow settling after a disturbance. The figure raised an arm, and the streetlights flickered in response, dimming and brightening as though reacting to its presence. My name came again, clearer now, spoken in a voice I recognized completely. My own. The realization hit like a blow to the chest. The tone, the cadence, even the slight hesitation before the last syllable. It was perfect. A mirror. I shook my head, backing away, breath coming in shallow gasps. This isn't real, I whispered, though the words felt weak the moment they left my mouth. The figure tilted its head, mimicking the motion exactly. When it spoke again, the voice layered over itself, mine and something else beneath it, something vast and patient. You've already been here. Memories surged unbidden. Flashes of snow, of darkness, of standing in this same street while lights flickered on around me. A sense of deja vu so intense it made me dizzy. I stumbled, catching myself against a lamppost that hummed faintly under my touch. The voice drew closer, now everywhere at once, seeping from doorways and windows, from beneath the snow and inside my skull. We've been waiting for you to remember. The air thickened, pressing in on me. The town felt alive now, awake in a way that had nothing to do with people. The buildings leaned inward, the lights pulsed softly, and the snow fell faster, swirling in tight, deliberate patterns around me. I realized then that the voice wasn't trying to lure me deeper. It was guiding me back to where I had already been. And somewhere beneath the sound of my own breathing, I heard footsteps moving in perfect sync with mine, matching me step for step, as if whatever was calling me had never truly been separate at all. The snow began to thin as I moved, not because it was stopping, but because it was being pulled away from something beneath it. The ground felt uneven now, subtly sloped, and with every step the air grew heavier, denser, as though I were walking into a pressure I couldn't see. The voice no longer called out. It didn't need to. I felt it guiding me, a steady pull at the base of my skull, drawing me forward with quiet certainty. The buildings thinned until there were only shapes half buried in white. Collapsed roofs, frozen fences, the suggestion of streets that no longer mattered. Ahead the earth dipped into a wide hollow, and the snow there looked different. Too smooth. Too untouched, like a surface hiding something vast beneath it. I stopped at the edge. The ground pulsed. Not visibly, not in a way I could point to, but I felt it through my boots, a slow rhythm that matched the beat of my heart a moment too closely. The realization crawled over me. Cold and inevitable, the town hadn't been abandoned. It had been covered. The voice returned, no longer separate from my thoughts. You remember now. Images crashed into me. Standing here before the same snow, the same silence. I saw myself younger, exhausted, bleeding from a gash I couldn't recall earning. I saw the storm closing in, the road disappearing behind me. I remembered the fear, the pleading. The moment I realized I wasn't alone in the white. The ground shifted, and the snow parted like a curtain being drawn back. Beneath it was not earth, but depth. A vast, hollow space lined with dark, organic shapes that pulsed slowly, rhythmically, as though breathing. Threads of ice and something darker stretched outward, weaving into the foundations of the town above. This was its heart, not a place but a presence. Understanding came with brutal clarity. The town wasn't a trap, it was a body, and it needed occupants. The voice was everywhere now, layered and endless, echoing through the hollow and inside my bones. It spoke with my memories, my fears. My voice multiplied until I couldn't tell where I ended and it began. You were never meant to leave, it said gently. You didn't. I staggered back, shaking my head, but the ground beneath me softened, giving way just enough to pull me forward. The snow clung to my legs, heavy and warm, like hands. I felt the weight of countless impressions beneath the surface. Footsteps, heartbeats, the residue of lives that had come here searching for escape, and found something else instead. The truth settled in slowly, horribly. The voicemail hadn't been a warning sent to me, it had been sent from me, from the part that stayed behind. The memories aligned, snapping into place. I remembered running, remembered the cold, remembered the moment I collapsed, certain I was going to die, and the moment something reached back. Not violently, not cruelly. Simply offering warmth, silence, belonging I had accepted. The version of me standing here now was only the echo that had managed to leave. The snow surged upward, wrapping around my legs, my waist, my chest. It didn't burn or freeze, it numbed. The voice softened, almost kind. Everyone comes back eventually. The lights in the town flickered in unison, glowing brighter as the ground welcomed me home. My breath slowed. The fear dulled, and as the last of the cold slipped away, I felt the town settle around me, complete once more, waiting patiently for the next traveler to hear the call and follow the road that never truly let anyone go.